Here you go, bro.
Welcome to another edition of 22MW. My name's Tony. I'm coming to you from EBK Studios. Tonight I'm joined by my brother Kurtis. Kurtis, tonight's movie is excluded. What's your favorite job invented for a movie?
Favorite job invented for a movie?
Like a Ghostbusters not a real thing. They invented that for a movie.
Okay. Well, it's not Asteroid Driller.
Okay.
Obviously, right? So
that's top 10, but
I
I think this is kind of easy. I don't even think this is an opinion-based question.
This is a question I have to start running through every movie I've ever seen in my head very quickly. So, because I didn't get this asked this beforehand. What's yours?
Yeah, should I start screening these questions by you? I mean, these questions are only here because you couldn't just say like, "Yeah, what's up?" or "How's it going?"
Okay, well, maybe give me the question ahead of time.
I mean, the obvious answer, if it's not a Ghostbuster, is a pet detective.
That probably does exist, though.
I don't think so. I mean, there's probably one, but
there's probably people who go and look for.
But was there one prior to 1994 when that movie came out?
I'm gonna say yes, but I'll give you that one.
Okay, appreciate it. All right, so tonight we're gonna be taking a look at the Ghostbusters movies, right? Kurtis, you're a big fan of these,
especially the first one, yeah.
For me, these are a little before my time. Like, I like them, but I don't really watch them on my own. So I'm glad we got to do this podcast, and let's talk about them a little bit. From 1984, directed by Ivan Reitman, starring Bill Murray, Rick Moranis, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, Ernie Hudson, Sigourney Weaver, and Annie Potts. The original Ghostbusters. Kurtis?
So, I love this movie. I think it's hysterical. It was my number 2 funniest movie after South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut on our list. I loved it. I thought it was funny growing up, and then when you get to be older and you get the more adult humor in it, it's even funnier. And it's really impressive how well they did it. This is the total opposite, and granted it's a comedy, but it's the total opposite of like that Armageddon movie. Everything in this movie feels real honest, which is really hard to do in a movie like this. The comedy feels real honest. The joke is never the characters. It's never like, oh, Egon is stoic and logical, or Lewis is a nerd. The characters are there. They're done by super talented, great people, and the joke is how they play off each other and how they play off what's going on in the story. And I don't know that you could make a movie like this, and I know they're going to try, but I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible. I think they set themselves up to fail in one way or another. Maybe the movie's financially successful. Maybe people think it's pretty funny, but it's never going to be as good as this. It's never going to be as funny as this, and I don't think that's necessarily the movie's fault. I just don't think it's possible to do. All the jokes in this movie that were great and still great to me have been done to death and never been done as well, and they're never going to be done as well. And that's why you don't remake this movie. You shouldn't have been remade. It's perfect the way it is.
You said something super interesting to me there that I'd never put my finger on, was the characters aren't the joke. And that's such a good point. And then as soon as you say that, I instantly think about Leslie Jones diving and going.
Yeah, I mean, the joke, she's a funny lady, but she's the joke a lot of times, especially in that trailer.
Right. And, that's a really good point. And the comedy in this movie is almost so subtle that it's amazing. And watching it as somebody that hasn't seen it a ton of times and is used to watching, other stuff that comes out now. It almost took me a minute to have to get back into that kind of humor that Bill Murray was. This is the best example of I probably like Stripes better. I maybe even like Groundhog Day better. But this is like Bill Murray at his most Bill Murray, I think.
Yeah, and this isn't you're not going to be laughing hysterically as you're watching this movie.
No, but it's cool how subtle and funny.
Yes, exactly.
Cool.
It's impressive how funny it is. And a part of it is that Bill Murray is one of the funniest people ever to live. He's
I think you're underselling him. He's super talented. He's
yes,
both comedically
that's what I was,
and a talented actor.
And that's what I was going to say next. And he's super talented. So you had funny people. Look, a lot of the women who are in that new movie are super funny. They're very funny to varying degrees. I'm not going to say they're not talented. These people are very talented. To pull this movie off the way they did, it's so amazingly well done. Again, it isn't fair to Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy and all those people. It's not fair to them to even try and make something that's going to be half as good as this. It's not fair.
I think it goes beyond that. I don't even think it's fair to women-led movies. I think that this was a terrible pick for something to remake for that reason alone. I mean,
I thought that going in, and I hadn't watched these when we had our conversation a few weeks ago, and watching it again this week, I was like, they had picked a really bad one. That was a really bad decision by Hollywood in general, if Hollywood in general can make decisions.
Yeah, okay. The one thing that I don't like about this movie is, I guess you would call it CGI, the visual effects, whatever you want to call it. Like the stop motion stuff looks really good. I really like the stop motion stuff. But the CGI doesn't work for me. It looks terrible. Like when what are the dog creatures' names? Whenever they're moving, they look terrible.
Terrible. But there are a lot of impressive special effects too, like the books floating and the eggs cooking on
sure.
But yeah, some of the, I don't know if you call it CGI, but
visual effects.
Definitely the dogs when they're in their non-puppet state look very terrible, very dated. But I don't care. This movie's so amazing. It's so funny. You had these very archetype characters. Egon's stoic and logical. Peter is snarky. Winston's the everyman. Dan Aykroyd, Ray is has that childlike wonderment of what's going on, and just the way they play. Again, those are never the jokes, but the way those characters play off each other, even though there's maybe not a ton of depth to those characters, some of them especially, it still works. That Lewis character is so funny, and again, it's never the joke that he's a nerd. It's what he's saying, it's what he's doing, it's what's going on in the movie that's funny. It's not like, oh, he's a nerd, get it? He wears glasses, and Sigourney Weaver doesn't find him sexually attractive. No, it's funny because Rick Moranis is a very incredibly talented comedic actor who, when he
that part, it takes talent to pull off and be successful. I mean, it's borderline like just ridiculous and stereotypical, but he just kills it. I mean, the faces he makes, the inflection on his voice, just like everything. And part of it too is like, it seems like Dad did an impression of Rick Moranis a lot growing up, and so like I hear Dad in it sometimes because Dad does that voice, and I like Rick Moranis, and again, he's my favorite Ghostbuster.
He's not a real Ghostbuster.
What?
He put on the uniform once and he didn't even do anything, and it was one of Egon's uniforms.
But I like it changed too. Like I like Ray more than Egon too.
Okay, it's Bill Murray. Peter Venkman is the best Ghostbuster by far.
Well, due to affirmative action, then I have to put Ernie Hudson. So that leaves only one guy at the bottom for me.
I wish Ernie Hudson had a bigger part in these. I think he's an underrated actor, and that everyman aspect he has probably could have been. I mean, there's only so much time in the movie, and they had so many great characters, but he gets a little bit more time in the second one. Although he doesn't get arrested. Only the white guys get arrested in the second one. Right?
I think everyone gets more time in the second one, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's more character driven.
Right. So let's rate this one and move on to that. What are you gonna rate it?
One of my all-time favorite movies, 5 out of 5.
For me, 4 Slimers out of 5.
That's
very good movie.
Ridiculous. To only give it 4.
All right, up next from 5 years later, 1989. Also directed by Ivan Reitman, starring Rick Moranis, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, Sigourney Weaver, Ernie Hudson, Annie Potts. Ghostbusters II. So something I found interesting about watching this movie is like one of the psychics predicts that the end of the world will be February 14th, 2016. And that day didn't like get celebrated like other cult classic movies.
Well, it was also Chloe Webb who predicted that, and that made me think of that awful Sid and Nancy movie. So,
okay.
I don't like having to remember watching that movie.
Yeah, I'm I forget a lot of stuff. We watch so much stuff here, and I've forgotten about it. Thanks for reminding me.
You must suffer with me.
I am surprised that the name Egon never caught on. If you ever had another kid, would you consider naming it Egon?
My wife gets to pick when and if we have another one, so I got to pick the first name. The deal was she got to pick the second one, so.
Why'd you waste it?
What do you mean, why did I waste it?
Nah, I'm just kidding.
I named him after our grandfather.
I know. Well,
and myself.
Yeah. Okay. And this movie, which I didn't, like, I never put this together till today when I watched it, does one of Kurtis's movie pet peeves.
Yeah, it totally does. He does it to an almost insulting degree, right? Like, I mean, it's... Hey, remember we all saw that marshmallow guy blow up and pretty much everyone... Nope, no one saw it. Someone released some gas in the air and that's what we all smelled it and we thought we saw it.
What else does it do?
This does the reset.
It does the complete reset. Even the Sigourney Weaver stuff is reset. I mean, this is where freaking National Treasures, which is the first time I ever heard you mention that, took this from.
I mean, break them up so we can get them back together.
Yep, textbook, Kurtis. That being said, I prefer this movie to the first one, and I know I'm
Shut
like
up.
no one person ever. That court scene is hilarious to me. That's the funniest thing. And again, it's really cool when Bill Murray's telling Rick Moranis what to say. It's so funny. I just can't stop laughing. And then like it does the cool. I love the do re Egon. I love that. I think
the problem is that the movie never. That's early in the movie, and it never gets any better than that.
But like that's an all-time great scene, I think.
It's good. I mean, for me, I like this one. A lot of people don't maybe hate it or think it's. I mean, it is vastly inferior to the second one for a couple of reasons. One, the jokes are not as honest this time. There's some much cheaper laughs in there. It's not as clever with the humor. And while we do get to spend more time with the characters,
which is what I love.
That's a good part of it. We also spend more time with the story. Like, I mean, if you were to like, say you hadn't watched these movies in a year or two and asked you to name like your favorite things about the first one, you'd start naming characters. You might start naming a scene or two. It would probably get down, like, I mean, maybe you get down to 7 or 8 and you say Stay Puft before you even get to something that's really plot related. If you start talking about this movie and the things you remember about it, like one of the first things you're going to remember about it is the dude in the paint, the creepy dude in the painting, the river of slime. Like the plot and the stuff that happens in the story is way more prominent. And it's okay. It's not bad, but it's not super interesting. It's not what I loved about the first one. I never loved in the first one, like, oh wow, we're gonna go fight Gozer. No, it was the humor. It was it was just the way those characters played off each other. And when the story was involved, it was how they reacted to the story that I loved, not the story itself. And in this one, it's more about the plot and the story, and I think it suffers for that. That said, we do get to spend more time with these characters that we love. They're still funny. The jokes are, again, a little less clever, a little more forced, a little less honest, but still a good movie.
There's nothing in the first movie funnier than that court scene in the second one. That's the funniest thing in any of these movies.
When they go to the hotel in the first one, everything about that is so funny. The way there's trash in the place, the way they're like, oh, to be very discreet, and they show up with the siren blazing, and they come in just yelling. The way Egon is like giving him the price by like rubbing his fingers on his face, and they're just like, oh, okay, fine, we'll just go back. That's like something our dad would have done. Where it's like, oh, we'll just go back inside and just let this back out, like. I do that with my kid. Like when he says like tries to say something I don't like or says he'll do something like, okay, well we'll just throw this stuff in the trash. So it's just, that scene is better than the courtroom scene.
Yeah, but the courtroom's also like super topical too. Like it's really current. Like that's. You see so much of that nowadays, like people saying like, oh, we need to have more gun laws and we need to get rid of guns. But those people are politicians that usually have some sorts of protection by guns. And that's exactly what happens in this movie. The judge is like, push comes to shove and he's like, okay, yeah, y'all do need these. Please save my butt.
Well, that goes back to the stupid reset thing, which is, again, one reason that this movie suffers is the complete reset of everything.
Okay. I mean, not of everything, but yeah, a lot of it, which is a pet peeve of yours, and I get it. But, to me, if you just made like 6.5 minute montage out of the first movie and then showed me the second one, that's the way to do it.
One thing that always bothered me about this movie, too, is that they repainted the logo in the movie to be the logo for the movie. Like they repainted.
Oh, they did. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
To give the number 2. Like
that's weird. Yeah. I never thought about that. It's a good point.
Like it makes sense for the movie to have that logo, but in the movie they should have still had the original, or maybe they redesigned it. I get that, but it shouldn't be holding up a number 2 to let you know, hey, this is the second movie, just in case you forgot.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could probably put like a throwaway line in there about they're about peace, and I think you could probably, but they didn't do that. That's a good point.
Yeah,
good point. This one for me is a 5 Oscars out of 5. So,
look, this is pretty good, all right, but the first one is not just a classic; it's a perfect movie. Like it's ridiculous enough to say it's not a 5 out of 5. That may be the most ridiculous rating we've ever had in the history of the show. But to say this one is a 5 out of 5 is, this is good. It's a 4 out of 5. I love this one too, despite my problems with it. But it's nowhere near as good as the first one. The first one is an all-time great movie. I keep reading these people saying like, "Oh, I went back and watched the first one. It wasn't even that great." Shut up! Like that's so ridiculous. Well, no, I get you want to be supportive of females and you want to be supportive of their movie. Okay, that's fine. You're entitled to do that. Good job. Don't do something stupid like go back and say, "Oh, I rewatched the first one. It wasn't even that great." I don't understand why people are upset about it.
No, I think that there's something there. I think that movie, like I said, it took me a minute to appreciate the humor in it because it's just. You don't see other movies like that.
No, but I'm seeing people who say they liked it, but they went back and watched it today, and then was like, "Oh, it's no good." And
okay, I liked it, but it wasn't like one of my favorite things. I haven't seen it a ton of times, and it's still every time I see Egon doesn't have blonde hair, it shocks me.
Well, so they did have the cartoon show, which I wouldn't mind watching that again. I always enjoyed that show. I thought it was really good. It was actually kind of scary sometimes. And the other thing they did is they actually did a Ghostbusters 3 in some ways. They had a video game that came out maybe like 7 or 8 years ago with the original cast, minus Rick Moranis, who won't come out of retirement, even though his kids are grown now.
What are you crapping on Rick Moranis for?
I'm not I'm saying like the guy's a genius. We should be getting more work from him.
I think he said that he would do Spaceballs too. I think he did say that.
Okay. Well, they can't recast Dark Helmet, so.
Yeah.
But
your point about the game.
The game was really good. I wish I had time to replay it. I'm way behind on my video games as is. But it's a fun game. You play as a new recruit Ghostbusters, but it has all the original characters. Even Walter Peck is in there. Brian Doyle Murphy is in it, but he's playing a different character. I think he plays the mayor in the game instead of I think he was a doctor in one of the movies. I can't remember which one, but
in the second one he's like the mayor's assistant, isn't he?
No, he's like the doctor.
Oh, not Brian Doyle Murray. I'm getting Wayne's World characters confused.
No, yeah, Brian Doyle Murray is the mayor, I believe, in the video game.
Oh, okay, so it's a Groundhog Day crossover.
Yeah.
Man, I got it. Took me 2 tries, but I got it.
But it's a very fun game, and it's funny, and it has a lot of stuff. I would check that out too.
Yeah, I actually tried to play it. That was like when I was going through that phase where I just couldn't accept that I couldn't play video games anymore because they have too many buttons. I can kick your butt at Mario Strikers though.
Yeah.
I had something I wanted to talk about, something I thought was super kind of interesting. So we heard a lot of news this week about a movie that's coming out in 2 weeks called Star Trek Beyond, right?
Yeah, there was something said about it.
But the interesting thing is this weekend, Ghostbusters comes out. And I don't know if you noticed what the Rotten Tomatoes score is.
I have not looked yet, no.
Does not have one. I went and looked for it because I was curious if they had opened it up to critics to review yet or not. Typically, if they don't do it, it's not a good sign, right?
The only thing I read was says that initial screenings were mostly positive, which is not exactly a rate. Usually early screenings, like Mike, I was actually kind of excited for Mike and Dave get wedding dates last weekend because it started out at like 75%, and every time I went to go check what time I was going to go see the movie, it was down 10% to the point I think it was like in the 30s. So you can't go.
It's 44. But
okay,
yeah.
Well, initial screenings are a lot of times. They're not the hot critics and things like that, so it's very common to see a movie go down. But
it hasn't been rated by anyone.
Well, I was just saying based on that. I was just saying that the comments were that the early reviews were positive. That doesn't always mean a whole lot. But I don't want to sound like I'm rooting for this movie to fail because I don't want to go into this movie just because. I'm not as.
I think we'll give it a fair chance, right? I mean, that's not what we do here.
I want to give it a fair chance. Am I happy they're remaking the movie? No. Do I hate it?
But I mean, we try and give everything a fair chance. Even if we have low expectations or high expectations, we try and give it a fair shot, right? And so why would this be any different?
I'm going to give it a fair shot. I like to be open about my biases, though. You know that.
Okay.
I like to say, I'm a huge fan of the original. But I've also said that I don't care that they remade this movie. I don't care it's an all-female cast. None of that stuff bothers me. If anything, I think it's totally unfair to the people in this movie, and I agree with you. It's unfair to, in general, female lead movies to put this on the pedestal, make this your coup de grace of female lead movies because it's not going to be as good as the original Ghostbusters. I'm not saying this objectively or subjectively. That movie is objectively great. It's objectively amazing. It's objectively full of super talented, some of the most talented, funny people who ever worked in the business at the top of their game. And look, there's some good people involved with this, but they're not going to make a better movie. They're just not. They're not going to. I'll say that. This movie may be all right. I may give it a good review. It's not going to be better than original Ghostbusters, I promise you.
And Ghostbusters is like the only movie I can come up with that the sequel's better than the original. I mean, I know you'll say The Dark Knight, which is ridiculous.
No, Batman Begins is better.
Okay.
I've always said that.
Maybe a Rocky movie is better than probably not even that. I don't know. They're different. We've talked about them at length before, but
Creed might be better than the original Rocky, but
I need to watch that again. I've got to watch Whiplash again too. I'm probably going to do that this week because I don't know, just feeling the itch to watch Whiplash again.
Great movie.
Yep. All right, so this weekend we're going to be reviewing Star Trek Into Darkness, and as I said, Ghostbusters 2016. And Kurtis has promised that he'll give you a fair review because normally he doesn't. No. Anyways, gotta go, son.
Pay attention.